The coffee mug in Mitch Calloway's hand was shaking, not from the cold, though the heat in the Gadsden Arms was doing its usual impression of a dying engine, not from exhaustion, though he hadn't slept more than 4 hours. The mug was shaking because Victoria Harmon was standing at his apartment door. Victoria Harmon, the woman whose emergency electrical panel he'd rewired 11 hours ago, 33 floors above the Charleston Harbor. The woman whose face was on the brass plaque in the lobby of a hotel that charged more per night than he made in a week. She was standing in his hallway with a designer carry-on at her feet and mascara tracked down her cheeks like she'd been crying since midnight, which, he realized, she probably had. "I hope there's room," she said. Her voice cracked on the last word. Behind Mitch, 8-year-old Eli appeared in the doorway, wearing rocket ship pajamas and a tangle of bedhead, blinking at the woman in the $1,000 coat like she'd wandered in from a movie that had taken a wrong turn. The neighbors' doors were already cracking open. Mrs. Okafor's reading glasses appeared in the gap of 4C. A whisper started somewhere down the hall, the kind that spreads through a building like smoke, picking up detail as it goes. Last night, exhausted and smelling like copper wire and solder, Mitch had said it as a joke. A throwaway line to fill silence, the way he always did when he didn't know what else to offer. He'd looked at this stranger crying alone in her gleaming, empty penthouse and said, "If you're ever tired of all this space, you can always move in with me. 3rd floor walk-up, heat's a coin toss, neighbor makes soup that seeps through the walls. But my kid tells good jokes, and there's always coffee." He'd meant nothing by it. And now, she was here. What happens when a joke becomes someone's last hope? And what did she mean when she whispered, so quietly he almost didn't catch it, "You don't know what you just pulled me back from"? The Friday before had started the way every Friday started in Mitch Calloway's life, as a carefully managed act of survival. At 39, he lived in a 2-bedroom apartment on the 3rd floor of the Gadsden Arms in Cannonboro, one of Charleston's older working-class pockets. The kind of neighborhood that still had front stoops and arguments about parking. The building's elevator worked 4 days out of 7. The hallways always smelled like Mrs. Okafor's groundnut stew, which was either heaven or a haunting, depending on what time you came home. Mitch held down 3 jobs with the precision of someone who'd long since stopped having the luxury of rest. Licensed electrician during the week, mostly commercial and residential repair. Line cook at Flanagan's Sports Bar on Friday nights. Tips were decent if the game was good. And early Sunday mornings, before Eli woke up, he ran maintenance checks at the Mercy Hill Medical Office Complex, a ghost town of exam rooms at 5 a.m. that paid him $70 cash and nobody's questions. Eli was 8.5, he would correct you. In 2nd grade at Calhoun Street Elementary, reading at a 5th grade level, obsessed with space and rockets. He had his mother's eyes, dark and searching, the kind that looked at you like they were checking whether what you said and what you meant were the same thing. 2 nights before everything changed, Mitch had been on the living room floor sewing the torn strap back onto Eli's backpack with fishing line. Stronger than thread, he had it on hand, when Eli looked up from his library book and asked, "Dad, how come Jalen's family has a yard with a trampoline?" Jalen lived 4 blocks over. Nice house, 2 parents, a golden retriever who had his own Instagram account, though Eli didn't know that part yet. Mitch pulled the fishing line taut and said, without missing a beat, "Because trampolines are overrated." "You know what's better than a trampoline?" He poked Eli's ribs. "Rocket science. And we've got a library card." Eli laughed. That sound, bright and sudden, like a light being switched on, and Mitch ruffled his hair and pushed down the familiar ache that came with lying to protect innocence. Later that night, after Eli fell asleep with his library book open on his chest and the little brass compass sitting on the bookshelf, the one that had been Diane's, that Mitch had given Eli 2 years ago because the boy needed something to hold that had her in it, Mitch sat at the kitchen table alone. The bills were spread out in front of him like bad news in several languages. Electric bill, 63 days past due. Final notice in red. Rent, $1,350, due in 5 days. 2 text messages from their landlord, Mr. Brower, each one shorter and less patient than the last. The most recent one contained the word proceedings, which Mitch had read 3 times to make sure he understood what it meant. He ran the numbers again. The Friday cooking shift might bring in $140 if the Gamecocks were playing. The electrician jobs scheduled for next week were honest work, but the checks came slow. The gap was real and wide and not going anywhere. He didn't cry. He'd cried himself dry in the weeks after the accident, after the driver who'd run the red light on Meeting Street had taken Diane from them in about 7 seconds of noise and glass, and then silence. That was 3 years ago. He wasn't counting. Instead, he sat in the dark and said the same quiet thing he said every night to whatever version of the universe might still be listening. Just give me 1 more month. 1 more month and I can figure this out. He thought about Diane, how she'd always found the door in the room when all he could see were walls. "It's just math, Mitch," she'd say, laughing at herself while stretching $20 into a week of groceries. He'd been playing their game alone for a long time now. He wasn't getting better at it. Friday night at Flanagan's was loud and hot and purposeful. The way Mitch liked work. No room for thinking, just motion. He dropped Eli at Mrs. Okafor's in 4C. She never charged him. He fixed her fuses and hauled her groceries up 3 flights, and they never called it even because they both knew it wasn't a transaction. At 9:22 p.m., he remembered because the mounted TV was showing the 4th quarter 2-minute warning. His phone buzzed. Rick Mendez. Rick ran Charleston's go-to emergency trades dispatch and only called when he had overflow. "High-rise situation," Rick said. "Harmon Grand downtown. Something shorted out in the penthouse electrical panel. Whole suite's dark. Hotel maintenance can't touch it. It's custom work. $350 cash if you can get there in the hour." Mitch was already untying his apron. $350 meant the rent gap closed. Meant the permission slip for Eli's planetarium trip, $18 that might as well have been $1,800, got signed. Meant 11 days of breathing room. He found a parking spot between a Range Rover and something German he didn't recognize the logo of, and walked into the Harmon Grand with his tool bag. The lobby was the kind of grand that made you conscious of your work pants. Marble floors, brass fixtures, a ceiling so tall it had its own atmosphere. The night security lead, a solid man named Carl with 14 years on his badge, looked at Mitch's steel toes with the particular neutrality of someone who'd learned exactly how much judgment his job required. "Penthouse level," Carl said. "Private elevator, left past the concierge. Don't touch anything that isn't the panel." Mitch nodded. He didn't say what he was thinking, which was that everything in this building cost more than his van. The elevator opened directly into the penthouse. Mitch stepped out and stopped. The space was vast, maybe 2,800 square feet of pale stone and glass and harbor view. Floor-to-ceiling windows throwing the city's lights onto the water like scattered change. Everything was tasteful and cold and perfectly arranged, the kind of room where nothing had ever been left out of place. No takeout containers, no books with broken spines, no coffee rings on anything. A woman stood at the far window, her back to him. Business suit, heels still on at 10 on a Friday, hair half pulled from whatever it had been pinned into. "Panels in the service corridor?" Mitch said, to let her know he was there. "Yes," she said. She didn't turn. "I'll stay out of your way." He found the problem in 10 minutes. A corroded breaker that had cascaded into 3 others. Moisture damage working back months. He was quiet while he worked, respectful of the space, the way he always was in other people's rooms. After about 40 minutes, he heard something from across the room. Not words, just a breath. The kind that comes from trying to hold something in and finally losing the fight. He glanced over. Her shoulders were shaking. He finished the job, tested the panel, and began packing his bag. Then he said, because the silence had become a kind of weight, "You all right over there?" She turned for the first time, and he saw the mascara, the red eyes, the expression of someone who'd been keeping it together so long that together had finally stopped cooperating. "Fine," she said. Then, "No, I'm not." He didn't know what made him stay. He wasn't the type to insert himself into other people's pain. But she was alone in 33 floors of dark glass, and something about it felt wrong to just leave. He sat on the edge of a marble credenza that probably cost more than his van and said, "You don't have to talk, but if you want to, I've got time." And she talked. Her name was Victoria Harmon. He learned this the way he learned most things that night, slowly, in pieces, the way information comes when someone hasn't spoken honestly in a long time. Her grandfather had built the first Harmon Hotel in Savannah in 1983. Her father had grown it. She had taken it national, 17 properties, 4 more under development, a company that occupied a significant corner of the luxury hospitality world. She had given the company her 30s, her social life, most of her sleep, and, as of 8 days ago, her marriage. 17 years, she said. Her voice was almost level. He said I'd never actually married him. Said I'd married the company and he was just someone I scheduled in. She said it like she wasn't entirely sure he was wrong. Mitch didn't try to fix it. He just said, "That's a hard thing to hear, even if you're not sure it's a lie." She looked at him like that surprised her. They talked for 2 hours about loss. He told her about Diane, the red light on Meeting Street, what it meant to be a father and a mother at the same time, and to do a mediocre job of both. About kids, she'd delayed having children for the right time and was now quietly wondering if she'd let the right time pass like an expiration date. About the different ways a person could be emptied out. "I've sold hotel rooms to newlyweds," she said, looking around the penthouse. "I know the exact combination of thread count and lighting that makes people feel like their lives are working. But I come back here every night and I can't remember why I built any of it." He looked around, the spotless surfaces, the art that was probably worth a great deal, and said nothing to him. The total absence of evidence that a human being actually lived here. It was like a museum after closing. Beautiful, but hollow. "It's a beautiful room," he said honestly, "but it does look lonely." She was quiet for a moment. Then, "It is the loneliest place I've ever been." When the hour got late, and he stood to pack up properly, he looked back at her. This stranger standing alone in 33 floors of quiet, and made the joke. The one he always made when he didn't know what else to offer. The kind that was supposed to land soft and evaporate. "If you ever get tired of all this space," he said, picking up his bag, "you're welcome to move in with me. 3rd floor walk-up, heat has opinions. Neighbor's soup is basically a permanent fixture. But my kid tells good jokes, and there's always coffee." She smiled. A real one, not the corporate kind, the other kind. "I'll remember that," she said. He waved, rode the elevator down, and thought, that was one of those strange midnight conversations that feel important in the moment and disappear by morning. He was wrong. Saturday arrived gray and cool, harbor fog rolling through Charleston's streets like it paid rent. Mitch had been up since 6, standing at the kitchen counter in a worn t-shirt, waiting for coffee to finish and running numbers in his head. When the knock came. He opened the door and there was Victoria Harmon, designer carry-on at her feet, the same coat, mascara, different now, dried rather than fresh, like she'd cried herself out somewhere between last night and this morning and arrived on the other side of it. She stood in his hallway that smelled faintly of mold and Mrs. Okafor's stew and looked at him like she'd made a decision and wasn't taking it back. "I hope there's room," she said. Behind Mitch, Eli materialized in rocket ship pajamas and bedhead. He looked at the woman. He looked at his dad. He looked at the carry-on with the careful assessment of an 8-year-old processing new information. "Are you moving in?" he asked. "Eli," Mitch started. "I might be," Victoria said. She looked at the boy with something unguarded in her face. "Okay," Eli said. He turned around and walked back toward his room. Mitch stood there holding his coffee mug. Down the hall, Mrs. Okafor's door was definitely open a crack. The universe, apparently, was going to do what it wanted. He stepped back. "Come in." She walked into his apartment. The water stains above the window, the furniture that didn't match, the crayons and library books scattered across the floor, Eli's brass compass visible on the bookshelf through the open bedroom door, and stood in the middle of all of it and said quietly, "This feels like a place where people actually live." The arrangement was settled fast and slightly surreal. Victoria needed space to think. Real space, she said, not the 33-floor kind. She would pay rent, 3 months up front, $4,050. Mitch's hand wasn't entirely steady when he held the check. She'd take the second bedroom, which had been used for storage. Mitch would take the couch. Eli would have the room they'd been sharing. "This is an insane idea," Mitch said. "When has sensible ever made a person happy?" she said. Eli appeared in the kitchen doorway, holding a cereal box, studying her with the gravity of someone making an important judgment. "She can stay, Dad." He tilted his head. "She looks like she needs pancakes." The first week was a careful, funny, unexpectedly tender negotiation between two worlds that had never been designed to overlap. Victoria had never used a coin-operated washer in her life. Mitch gave her a bag of quarters and a walkthrough. She recorded the settings in her phone's notes app with the focus of someone preparing for a compliance audit. She burned spaghetti, actually burned it, produced visible smoke, and Eli showed her how to make mac and cheese from a box with the gravity of a master passing down sacred knowledge. When she didn't burn it, he said, "You're trainable." She laughed so hard she had to sit down. She sat on the floor with Eli building a model rocket, her silk blouse collecting carpet fuzz, reading assembly instructions aloud in her boardroom voice, while Eli asked her to repeat things because it was funny. Mitch watched from the kitchen doorway and had the genuine sensation of being in an alternate universe. The second week found its rhythm. Victoria woke at 5:15, the old corporate clock in her body refusing to adjust. She made excellent coffee and left a cup on the counter for Mitch without being asked. When her car service was reassigned to other duties, she learned the bus route with the determination of someone studying for an exam, navigating Charleston's transit system one transfer at a time. She picked Eli up from school on Tuesday, when Mitch had an emergency job run long. Standing among the other parents in her coat that probably cost 4 figures, a flamingo among pigeons. But Eli ran to her. That was the whole point. She helped with homework. She attended Eli's Thursday show and tell via FaceTime from a conference room because she'd promised and she kept it. She listened to Eli's elaborate theories about black holes with the same attention she gave quarterly earnings reports, which Eli recognized without knowing what to call it. Mitch watched his son bloom in the way children do when someone new is paying attention. Not replacing anyone, just adding to the total. Neighbors noticed. Mrs. Okafor declared herself officially curious and invited Victoria for tea. And 40 minutes later, they were elbow-deep in Medicare paperwork that had stumped the older woman for months. Victoria applied corporate problem-solving to bureaucratic machinery and emerged victorious. After that, Mrs. Okafor made her views known to anyone who'd stand still long enough. Mr. Feaster in 2A made a comment about rich people playing at normal that Mitch heard and chose not to feed because some opinions don't deserve the protein. Thursday of the second week, Mitch came home from the worst job of the month, standing in 4 inches of backup water in a flooded commercial kitchen for 3 hours, and found Victoria and Eli inside a blanket fort made from every cushion in the apartment. They'd ordered pizza. Eli was explaining the political dynamics of second grade with the seriousness of a foreign correspondent. Victoria looked up at Mitch, hair loose, no makeup, pizza sauce on her sleeve. She mouthed, "Thank you." He crawled into the fort. For 1 hour, they were just 3 people with pizza and nowhere else to be. The third week arrived carrying weather. A freelance photographer working the Harbor District caught them on a Saturday morning. Victoria pushing the grocery cart, Eli riding inside it making rocket launch sounds, Mitch beside them comparing cereal boxes with the focused intensity of a man who knows exactly how many ounces matter at a given price per unit. A picture of ordinary Saturday life. The caption was not ordinary. Hotel heiress Victoria Harmon's scandalous downgrade. CEO ditches penthouse for blue-collar charmer. The photo ran in 3 gossip outlets by Sunday evening. The comments were the usual mixture of cruelty and projection that the internet generates when a wealthy woman makes an unexpected choice. Victoria's phone became a siege weapon. Board members, PR council, her general counsel, people she hadn't heard from in months, suddenly very available. She took calls in the second bedroom with the door closed, emerging each time with something slightly reduced in her face, like a building losing heat through invisible cracks. Monday night, after Eli was asleep, she sat at the kitchen table and said it plainly. The board called an emergency session. Douglas Crane is leading it. She looked at her hands. Stock is down 15%. 3 anchor clients have expressed concern. Institutional investors are watching. She finally looked up. They gave me 48 hours. Leave here, return to the penthouse, resume normal public life, or resign my position. Mitch didn't say anything yet. Crane called it a crisis of judgment at the executive level, she said. Her voice was steady, but the steadiness was costing something. He said I was, his word, slumming. Mitch let that word sit in the air for a second. Is that what you think you're doing? He asked. No, she said. And she said it the way a person says something they are certain of when everything else is uncertain. It turned out Eli had not been fully asleep. The next morning, Mitch found something on the kitchen table, a drawing in crayon, detailed in the way children's drawings are when the kid is really trying. 3 stick figures holding hands outside a building, a sun overhead. Eli had labeled it, Us, Our Home. The E had run off the edge of the paper. On the back, in his careful second-grade printing, For Victoria, so you remember us. Mitch found her at 2 a.m. sitting at the table with the drawing in front of her. Not crying loudly, the other kind, the kind that shakes a person silently because they've run out of performance and are just feeling it. I don't want to lose this, she whispered. Either of you. But I built that company for 20 years. It's what I know how to be. Mitch pulled a chair close and sat. You built a company, he said. That's what you did. It isn't all of what you are. He paused. The person who reads rocket books with my kid and leaves coffee on the counter before anyone's awake. That's you. The real one. He looked at her. That's not a downgrade. That's just you, finally. She didn't say anything, but she didn't look away. Wednesday came in hard. Reporters had found the Gadsden arms, 2 of them with a camera, stationed on the sidewalk like they were covering an event. Someone, Mitch never found out who, had spray-painted 2 words on his work van in the parking lot. He saw it on his way out for the 7 a.m. job, repainted it that afternoon without mentioning it to Eli. Eli came home from school quiet, too quiet, the specific quiet of a kid who normally fills every room with sound, which means something has been swallowed. At dinner he said it. Some kids were saying stuff today about you and Victoria, that it's all fake, that you're using each other. He looked at his plate. I didn't know what to say. Mitch felt a rage he hadn't felt in years, not the slow, dull anger of exhausted poverty, but the bright, specific fury of watching his child absorb pain that came from adult decisions. He wanted to turn to Victoria and say, this is too much, you need to go. The bleeding has to stop before Eli's in the middle of it. But Eli looked at Victoria, those dark, searching eyes, and said, if you need to go, that's okay. We'll miss you forever, but you can go. 8 years old. Where do children get that kind of grace? Victoria's face broke open. She held it together, just barely. She reached across the table and covered Eli's hand with hers. I'm not going anywhere tonight, she said. None of them slept much. They stayed on the couch under the big blanket, all 3 of them, a nature documentary playing that nobody was watching, each of them quietly memorizing the shape of the room, the shape of the evening, in case it was ending. Thursday morning, Mitch made a decision. He put on the gray button-down he saved for things that mattered. Court dates, school conferences, the anniversary of the day Diane died, and told Victoria he was coming with her to the board meeting. You don't have to, she started. Yes, I do, he said. If you're going to fight for something, you shouldn't do it alone. Eli appeared in his school uniform, backpack on, the brass compass tucked into his jacket pocket. Diane's compass, his compass now. I'm coming too, he said. These are my fancy clothes. They walked into Harmon Hospitality Group headquarters like they belonged there. which Mitch had decided on the ride over, they did, because belonging is mostly about deciding. Carl, at the security desk, held the elevator without being asked. Maybe he recognized something in their faces. Maybe 14 years on the job had taught him when something mattered. The boardroom occupied most of the 26th floor. Harbor view on 3 sides. A long dark table that implied permanence. 12 people arranged around it like a verdict waiting to be delivered. Douglas Crane sat at the head. 67, silver-haired, with the face of a man who'd long since stopped moving it except when necessary. He looked at Mitch and Eli waiting in the hallway with an expression that contained several things, none of them warm. Mitch and Eli sat on a bench near the elevators. Eli swung his legs. He was holding the compass in his open palm, looking at the needle. "What does it do?" Mitch asked quietly. Eli looked at it. "Points north," he said. "Mom always said, when you don't know which way to go, find north first. The rest figures out from there." Mitch put his arm around his son. They waited. Inside, Victoria stood at the head of the table. She hadn't sat. She was going to make them look up at her. Crane opened with the practiced precision of someone who dismantled careers before. "Victoria, your behavior over the past 3 weeks has introduced material risk to this company. 3 anchor clients have expressed concern. Institutional investors are watching. Stock is down 15%. He placed his hands flat on the table. "We have spent 41 years building the Harmon name into something that stands for excellence. I will not watch it become a tabloid." He said tabloid like it was something scraped off his shoe. Victoria let him finish. Then she said, in a voice that was calm the way very clear water is calm, because you can see straight to the bottom. "I met Mitch Calloway when I called for an emergency electrician on a Friday night. He rewired my panel, talked to me like I was a person rather than a quarterly report, and made a joke about his apartment being small and full of laughter." She paused. "He said my penthouse looked lonely." She looked at the room. He was right. It was the loneliest place I had ever been. She looked at each face around the table. "I have spent 3 weeks in a 2-bedroom walk-up apartment. The heat is unreliable. The elevator is an open question. An 8-year-old boy showed me how to make macaroni and cheese from a box and looked at me like I'd achieved something genuinely worth celebrating." Her voice stayed level. "I have not had one morning in 3 weeks where I didn't want to get up. That is not a small thing, Douglas. That is not a footnote in a reputation management discussion." Walter Birch, 81 years old, one of the original board members from her grandfather's era, cleared his throat. He spoke slowly, but everyone went quiet when he did. "I started this company because I wanted my family to have a good life," he said. "My son has a house in Hilton Head. I've been inside twice. My granddaughter sent me a birthday card this year. Printed signature. I gave him everything money could buy." He looked at his hands. "I don't know that I have any standing to tell someone else what success looks like." Simone Reyes, 34, youngest in the room, spoke without waiting for an opening. "My kids ask why I'm never home for dinner. I tell them I'm building their future." She looked at Crane. "My daughter said she'd rather have the present." I didn't have an answer. She sat back. Victoria's personal life is her own. What matters is whether she can lead this company. "She is embarrassing the company," Crane said flatly. "Living in." The door opened. Eli stood in the doorway. Backpack. School uniform. The brass compass held in his fist, the way kids hold things when they're using them for courage. He looked at the long table full of adults in suits. His voice shook, but it carried. "My dad isn't embarrassing." He found Crane specifically. Children always find the source. "He fixes broken things and makes them work again. He did that for our apartment and for Victoria when she was really sad." He lifted his chin. "My mom died when I was 5. My dad never stopped showing up. That's just what he does. He shows up." He walked to the end of the table, the nearest surface he could reach, and set the compass down. The brass needle swung and settled. Then he walked back out. In the hallway, Mitch pulled his son against him and held on. Inside the boardroom, the silence lasted long enough to mean something. Victoria didn't fill it. She just waited. The vote came. Walter Birch went first, for Victoria. Simone second. Then others, one by one, the way a room shifts when the weight in it finally finds its right position. The final count was 9-2 with one abstention. Crane sat back in his chair. He looked for a moment like a man who just understood something expensive. "Miss Harmon retains her position," he said formally. Victoria walked into the hallway. She went straight to Eli, crouched down, boardroom, good coat, all of it, and pulled the boy into a hug. "Thank you," she said. Her voice broke on it. Eli hugged back, matter-of-fact about it, the way kids are when they've done the right thing and adults are making too much of it. "That's just what family does," he said simply. Mitch felt something in his chest break apart and put itself back together differently in the space of 5 words. They walked out of the building together, the CEO, the electrician, the second grader with the brass compass back in his pocket. Not looking at phones or the small cluster of people near the lobby, just walking. February came, then March. The story cycled through its news cycle life and moved on to fresher scandals. The occasional article still surfaced, the CEO who chose a 2-bedroom, but mostly life had settled into its new shape. A different shape than before in almost every way. Victoria had gone back to Harmon Hospitality with something recalibrated. She was still the same executive, precise, hard to impress, demanding of quality. But the edges had changed. She instituted subsidized childcare for all full-time staff, flexible scheduling for parents of young children, a monthly program where every senior executive spent one shift doing frontline work, checking guests in, walking the floor at 6 a.m. the way the maintenance team did. Douglas Crane had eventually admitted, quietly and then more openly, that the changes had improved staff retention and, the number that mattered to him, the bottom line. "Happy employees," Victoria had said at the spring shareholders meeting, "make guests feel like they belong, and guests who feel like they belong come back." The business loan conversation had happened over breakfast in March. Victoria offered it directly. $22,000 at 3%, official papers drawn up by her personal attorney, the lowest legal rate. Mitch said no 4 times. Eli, without looking up from his cereal, said, "Why don't you borrow it and pay it back? Then it's not charity, it's just math." He returned to his cereal. Both adults looked at each other. "He's 8, Mitch said. "He's right," Victoria said. Callaway Electrical and Repair launched in April. By summer, Mitch had brought on 2 employees, both guys from the trades community, both raising kids solo, both familiar with the specific arithmetic of work and parenthood. By fall, he had a second van, his first commercial contract, and a reputation for showing up on time, doing quality work, and understanding that a family with no power at 11 p.m. is experiencing a crisis, not a revenue opportunity. He paid Victoria back 7 months ahead of schedule. The check came with a handwritten line, "For believing in someone who'd forgotten how to believe in himself." She framed it. He pretended not to notice. The neighborhood had traveled from whispers to something warmer. Mrs. Okafor had become Victoria's unlikely champion. After that afternoon of Medicare paperwork, she had made her views known to anyone who'd stand still. "That woman has a good heart. Don't let the coat fool you." Mr. Feaster in 2A had stopped making comments after a stretch of months in which nothing had confirmed his predictions and everything had refuted them. The Gadsden Arms, once briefly divided by gossip, had unified around the strange family in 3C, the way buildings do when something good turns out to be real. Eli, now 10, had joined the school's robotics team, a program that had received a quiet, anonymous donation shortly before his application, though he'd earned his spot on merit and had no reason to think otherwise. He wore his Callaway Electrical t-shirt on weekends and had explained his family situation to anyone who asked, with the calm authority of someone who had thought it through. "My dad fixes things. Victoria runs hotels. Together, they're basically a really good team. And I'm going to build rockets." October came around again. The same cool edge in the air that had been there the night Mitch had crouched at a penthouse electrical panel and made a joke that changed everything. They sat around the dinner table they'd bought in June. Solid oak, round, Mitch's first purchase from the business's first real profit month. Big enough for 3. Permanent, the way Eli had requested. Eli had an announcement. He unfolded a piece of paper from his backpack with the ceremony of someone delivering important news. "We had to write about our families today," he said. "Miss Patterson said we could write about any kind of family because there's a lot of kinds." He looked at them both. "I'll read it." He cleared his throat. "My family is not normal. My mom died when I was 5, but she's not gone. She's in the compass on my shelf, and in the way my dad laughs when he talks about her. Victoria isn't my mom, but she chose to stay when staying was hard. My dad says family isn't about paperwork or biology. It's about showing up. We show up for each other every day. That's not unusual. That's just right." He looked up, then at Victoria, then at Mitch. Miss Patterson wrote, "Deeply moving," in the margin. "I think she cried a little. I'm pretty sure that's an A." Victoria's eyes were full. She'd stopped hiding that months ago. Mitch reached across the table and took her hand and Eli's hand at the same time. Outside, Cannonboro was doing its evening thing. Someone's music too loud. A parking dispute 2 floors down. Mrs. Okafor's stew drifting faithfully down the hall. Charleston hummed in the middle distance. Inside, the second-hand chandelier, estate sale find, rewired by Mitch himself, threw warm light over their table. Victoria set down her fork. When she used this particular tone, it meant something was coming. "I have to tell you both something." They looked at her. "The board voted last month on a national expansion, New York headquarters. They want me to relocate, oversee it personally." She paused. "Douglas Crane actually championed it. Said the company was ready." Eli's hand went still under Mitch's. "I said no." The air in the room changed. "I told them my home is here. My family is here. That a corner office in Manhattan and a larger title are not worth more than what's at this table." She looked at Eli. Walter Birch told Douglas that a CEO who knows what matters is worth more than one who just chases what's next. A small smile. Douglas is deciding whether that's wisdom or a hostile remark. Eli launched out of his chair, not his most graceful exit, and threw both arms around her. "Good," he said, his voice muffled against her shoulder. "Because I already told everyone on the robotics team you're coming to the fall showcase, and I cannot be a liar." They laughed, all 3 of them, and the sound of it spilled out into the hallway, where Mrs. Okafor was passing with her mail and smiled and kept walking, because some things you don't interrupt. Later, after Eli was asleep, compass on the shelf, library book open on his chest like always, Mitch and Victoria stood at the living room window. The harbor sat low and still. The city did its ordinary nighttime things. They stood close, shoulders almost touching, and looked out at all of it. "Do you ever regret it?" Mitch asked. "The penthouse, the way things were before, any of it?" She thought about it honestly, the way she'd learned to think about things. "I regret that it took me 44 years to understand the difference between building something and actually living in it." She turned to look at him. "But the choice? No. You and Eli gave me back a direction I didn't know I'd lost." A pause. Then quietly, with a small smile, "And I can make macaroni and cheese from scratch now. Not the box. That is a genuine life skill." He laughed softly, careful not to wake Eli. "You know," he said, "when you knocked on my door that Saturday morning, I genuinely thought I was losing my mind. CEOs don't show up at third-floor walk-ups asking to move in. And electricians don't usually talk broken billionaires back to themselves with bad jokes," she said. And yet, he agreed. Here they were, in a 2-bedroom apartment on the 3rd floor of the Gadsden Arms, where the heat had moods and the elevator was unreliable, and a child had once placed his dead mother's compass on a boardroom table and changed the direction of several lives. Where a throwaway joke at midnight had become the foundation for a family that no blueprint would ever have designed. Outside, Charleston glittered in the dark, millions of people in millions of rooms. But theirs, small, worn, exactly right, was the only one that mattered tonight. Not because the universe had arranged it, because they'd chosen it. That's the thing no one tells you clearly enough about home. It isn't a place you arrive at. It's a decision you make again and again, in small, ordinary moments. In the coffee left on the counter before anyone's awake. In a compass held in a child's hand on the way into a room full of powerful people. In the choice to stay when leaving would be so much easier. Mitch had once sat alone in the dark of his apartment and whispered to a quiet universe, "Just give me one more month." The universe hadn't given him a month. It had given him a Friday night and a shorted panel and a woman who needed someone to tell her the truth about her empty room. It had given him this. "Here we are," Mitch said, quietly, without hurry, like a man who had finally arrived somewhere. And in those 3 words lived everything that mattered. Gratitude for what the hard years had built in him without his permission. Joy in what they'd made together out of practically nothing. Faith in what they'd choose tomorrow. One morning at a time. One shared meal. One compass pointing north at a time. They were home. They were proof, if proof were needed, that sometimes the life you didn't plan is the one that fits you best. That sometimes a throwaway joke at midnight is someone else's lifeline. And that the bravest thing a person can do, braver than building an empire, braver than surviving loss alone, is to open your door when someone is standing there with nowhere left to go and say, "Come in, there's room." There is always room for the people willing to stay.